Pentecost created the first church. This day where the Spirit dwelled amongst and filled up these gathered believers. It created the first church, but it also calls all other churches to be something. It creates the standard. It creates the expectation. It gives us the mission. And this is what it is. The day of Pentecost reminds us that we are to be a community of believers, declaring that Jesus is King with our actions and with our words. And I came up with this phrase as I was preparing for this sermon, and I really, really liked it, so you're going to see this again, probably a lot. But the church is a community of believers declaring that Jesus is King with our actions and with our words. This gathered group of believers that had the Spirit poured into them isn't some random group of strangers. They were the first church being gathered in community, being sanctified, being made holy by the Spirit. And they were sent out into the world as witnesses for Jesus. What I believe as a pastor because of this, there's a couple things that I take away because of what I see happening in Acts chapter 2. I believe that every follower of Jesus has the Spirit of God poured out on them, which transforms or sanctifies them for the work that God is calling them to do. I don't believe that a church comprised of Jesus followers have some people that are gifted or receive the Spirit and others who haven't received the Spirit, who aren't called, who aren't gifted. There's a theme that runs through the Bible, and this is honestly, going back to my days as an undergrad student, this was one of the things that opened my eyes when I started studying the Scriptures, and I started to understand things that I'd never seen before as a kid growing up in the church. There's this theme that runs from the beginning to the end. We first see these words specifically expressed in Exodus chapter 19. The words of God is that I will make you a royal priesthood. I will make you a holy nation. It's a vocation. It's a calling. A royal priesthood. Priests of the King. Priests are people who stand before God on behalf of people and stand before people on behalf of God. They offer up prayer. They offer up blessings. They offer up forgiveness and bring mercy and grace and make that connection between. And God is telling his people, you are going to be priests. Not just you, Moses, the person, but this whole nation. You're going to be a holy nation. And holy means set apart. It means with a specific divine purpose. And so you're going to be these priests that have a specific divine purpose. And we see this as a promise in Exodus chapter 19. God tells his people, you will be a royal priesthood, a holy nation. But my favorite part of this is if you're in 1 Peter chapter 2, you hear those same words of God, except he says, you are a royal nation. You are a holy priesthood. I mixed up those phrases. You are a holy nation and a royal priesthood. The fulfillment of those promises is being declared to the people of the church. You have become what God intended us. And there's thousands of years of human history between there. And Israel got it way wrong through a lot of that. And it required Jesus himself showing up in person to make that promise come true. But from the beginning of the Bible to the end, this is the story of God's people. And so one of the things that it's been September now, that since September, I stood up here with my family, and Dr. Woody Stevens, our interim DS at the time, stood up here and introduced us and asked me some questions and asked me to make some promises about what I was going to do. And one of the things that DS's district superintendents charge pastors to do when they're installed is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. It comes out of Ephesians chapter 4. And I take that very seriously. This is a big part of how I view my job description. Equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. And so for me, success isn't just more people in the seats, but a church that is collectively being faithful to this mission that we've been given. I said last week that a church of 20 that was being faithful to that mission is going to have a greater impact and be a better revelation of what Jesus is to the world than a church of 2,000 that just gathered together and went on their way as individuals. But again, the goal of the church is to be a community of believers, declaring that Jesus is King with our actions and our words.